The Red Sea wind drifts across the marble corridors of Sharm El-Sheikh's International Congress Center. Cameras are already in place, flags ripple beneath the desert sun, and the air hums with expectation. For decades, this Egyptian coastal city has been the quiet host of Middle East diplomacy, from peace summits to crisis talks, from Gaza truces to climate accords. But this time, the gathering carries a sharper edge. The world's attention turns to a new phrase whispered across capitals: a global coalition against Khamenei. It begins, like so many summits in this part of the world, with careful smiles, handshakes, and words about stability and peace. Yet behind those rehearsed greetings lies a shared calculation. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has become the immovable center of a regional order that many powers now want to contain or even dismantle. In Tehran, he is venerated as the guardian of the Islamic Revolution, the man who outlasted 6 American presidents and several wars. But to his critics, he is the architect of a shadow empire stretching from Beirut to Baghdad, from Damascus to Sana'a. An empire sustained through proxies, ideology, and the calculated use of chaos. For Arab leaders and their Western allies, the idea of confronting that system directly, not just its militias or satellites, but the power structure around Khamenei himself, represents both risk and opportunity. The summit in Sharm El-Sheikh becomes a symbolic battlefield: diplomacy versus defiance, sovereignty versus influence. Beneath the polished speeches, the question burns: can a divided region unite to push back against Tehran's reach, or will it fracture once more under the weight of its own rivalries? To understand why such a coalition matters, one must trace the long arc of Iran's regional strategy. Since the 1980s, the Islamic Republic has built a network of allies and armed groups under what Tehran calls the axis of resistance. Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, Shiite militias in Iraq, and Hamas factions in Gaza. Together they form a deterrent web designed to project power far beyond Iran's borders. These groups are not mere clients. Each has its own leadership and agenda, but all benefit from Iranian training, funding, and weaponry. The arrangement allows Khamenei's government to exert influence without direct confrontation, a strategy of plausible deniability that has frustrated Western militaries and regional governments alike. This approach has made Iran both resilient and reviled. Sanctions have crippled its economy, yet its proxies still operate across multiple theaters. Its leadership is insulated by ideology, yet pragmatic enough to survive through negotiation when necessary. Every major conflict, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Lebanon, Gaza, carries Iran's fingerprints. For its adversaries, particularly in the Gulf and Israel, this is no longer a regional nuisance. It is an existential threat to sovereignty and stability. Sharm El-Sheikh then becomes more than geography. It becomes theatre, the stage where a counter-narrative is written. Egypt, as host, plays the mediator's role once again. Its president, Abdel Fattah El-Sisi, presents the city as a neutral bridge between continents, but also a fortress of Arab diplomacy. In the months leading up to this gathering, the same halls hosted another pivotal event, the 2025 Gaza Peace Summit, attended by leaders from more than 20 nations and brokered in part by US President Donald Trump. That meeting, too, aimed to redefine alliances and end cycles of war. Iran notably declined the invitation, a quiet boycott that spoke volumes. Its absence allowed others to shape the narrative without Tehran at the table. Now, months later, the Sharm Initiative takes a more assertive tone. Reports circulate that certain Gulf states, joined by Egypt, Morocco and Jordan, have drafted a statement condemning Iran's interference in Arab affairs. Israel, though not an official participant, provides intelligence coordination behind closed doors. Washington lends its diplomatic and logistical backing, framing the effort as a global response to destabilization. European envoys whisper about synchronized sanctions. Turkish and African observers attend but tread cautiously. For some, the language of a coalition against Khamenei feels incendiary. For others, it is long overdue. Inside the main hall, the tone shifts between protocol and passion. Delegates debate not only the language of condemnation, but the architecture of action. What exactly does a coalition mean? Joint military drills, shared sanctions, coordinated intelligence? The discussions are tense, coloured by competing fears. Smaller states worry about retaliation, cyber attacks, trade disruptions, or even covert violence. Larger ones fear entrapment in another prolonged standoff. Diplomats speak of balance, of deterrence without direct conflict. Yet everyone in the room knows that balance in the Middle East rarely lasts. As journalists broadcast from the steps outside, the sense of history deepens. Commentators recall earlier attempts at unity, the Arab League's fractured resolutions, the Gulf Cooperation Council's moments of alignment and disarray. They ask whether this time will be any different. In Washington and Brussels, think tanks dissect the possibilities. If successful, a coalition could finally synchronize sanctions regimes, curb arms flows, and impose accountability for proxy wars. If it fails, it could accelerate confrontation and push Iran closer to its eastern partners, Russia and China. The heart of the summit lies not in speeches, but in the whispered side meetings, corridor diplomacy, where the real deals are made. American officials meet Gulf ministers to draft a naval security memorandum focusing on the Red Sea and the Strait of Hormuz. Egyptian intelligence shares satellite imagery of Houthi missile stockpiles in Yemen. Jordanian envoys propose an Arab stabilization fund for Iraq to counter Iranian-backed militias. European representatives float ideas of asset freezes and trade embargoes tied to human rights conditions. Each initiative forms a thread in the larger fabric of containment, but as the plans grow more ambitious, so too do the risks. Tehran watches closely. Iranian state television condemns the summit as a Western-engineered provocation, accusing Arab governments of betraying Islamic unity. Khamenei himself, in a televised address from Tehran, declares that the enemies of the Islamic Republic may meet in their resorts, but they will not dictate the destiny of our region. His words, both defensive and defiant, ripple through the streets of Tehran and the camps of Hezbollah alike. Iranian allies vow solidarity. Cyber units issue subtle warnings. The Revolutionary Guard stages naval exercises in the Gulf. Then, almost inevitably, reality intrudes. Within days of the summit's opening, reports emerge of a drone strike on a refinery in eastern Saudi Arabia. Intelligence traces the attack to a militia operating out of southern Iraq, one with known Iranian backing. Another explosion rocks a commercial vessel in the Red Sea, disrupting shipping lanes. The coalition convenes emergency talks, accusing Tehran of orchestrating escalation to derail their meeting. Iran denies involvement, calling the allegations baseless theatrics. The tension thickens. News outlets flood screens with images of oil fires and satellite maps of missile trajectories. The phrase proxy retaliation trends across global media. Yet, amid the noise, diplomatic work continues. Late-night sessions produce a communiqué, a carefully worded declaration condemning foreign interference, pledging defense cooperation, and urging Iran to respect international norms. The document stops short of naming Khamenei directly, but its intent is unmistakable. For the coalition's architects, it is a symbolic victory. For critics, a provocation wrapped in diplomacy. As days pass, the conflict inches toward a dangerous threshold. Hezbollah fighters launch rockets toward northern Israel. The Israeli Air Force retaliates with precision strikes on suspected weapons depots in southern Lebanon. Houthi rebels in Yemen fire missiles at coalition ships, prompting retaliatory strikes from naval forces patrolling the Red Sea. Baghdad once again becomes a proxy battlefield as pro-Iran militias clash with Iraqi security units. Each flashpoint is a test. Can the coalition maintain unity while the region ignites around it? Behind closed doors, disagreements deepen. Some members push for escalation, the creation of a joint command centre, more sanctions, even limited air operations. Others, mindful of domestic opinion, argue for restraint and renewed diplomacy. Egypt and the United States act as intermediaries, seeking to preserve the coalition's credibility without sliding into open war. Intelligence leaks reveal secret back-channel communications between Iranian and European diplomats, hints of possible compromise. In Tehran, analysts close to the regime describe these maneuvers as psychological warfare. But within Iran's own corridors of power, unease grows. Sanctions intensify, the rial weakens, and internal dissent simmers. Students protest rising prices. Reformists call for pragmatism. Khamenei, ever the tactician, authorises limited engagement through Oman, a familiar conduit for discreet diplomacy. The coalition's public face remains firm, but its private tone softens. The narrative slowly shifts from confrontation to conditional negotiation. Weeks later, in a smaller session back in Sharm El-Sheikh, envoys gather once more. The coalition has survived its first test, but at great cost. The final communiqué strikes a balance between warning and outreach. It demands that Iran curb its proxy activity, cooperate with international inspectors, and reopen stalled talks on regional security. In return, it hints at phased relief, economic openings if compliance follows. Khamenei's name no longer headlines the statement, yet everyone knows who the message is for. As the cameras pan across the closing ceremony, the symbolism is unmistakable. Delegates pose for photographs under the conference's banner, the Red Sea shimmering behind them. The world sees unity, but the insiders see fragility, an alliance of convenience that must now survive the storms of realpolitik. Still, something fundamental has shifted. The narrative of impunity has cracked. The idea that Tehran could act without consequence has been challenged, however briefly. The coalition's impact will not be measured in weeks or even months, but in the recalibration of regional power. In the months that follow, joint naval patrols reduce Red Sea attacks. New banking restrictions bite into Iran's overseas networks. Yet Tehran, adaptable as ever, tightens its links with Moscow and Beijing, trading technology for lifelines. Across the region, a tense equilibrium emerges, a contained Iran, a cautious coalition, and a Middle East still caught between deterrence and diplomacy. From a journalistic lens, what happened in Sharm El-Sheikh is both predictable and profound. Summits rarely change realities overnight. They signal intent, shape narratives, and draw new lines of legitimacy. The Coalition Against Khamenei did not overthrow regimes or rewrite borders, but it redefined perception. Iran's adversaries learned coordination, its allies learned caution. And in a region long defined by suspicion, even that counts as transformation. In the final analysis, Sharm El-Sheikh stands as a metaphor, a city where peace and pressure coexist. The coalition's legacy may rest less in its declarations than in the message it sent, that the balance of fear around Iran is no longer one-sided. Whether this alliance evolves into sustained policy or fades into diplomatic memory will depend on endurance, the rarest commodity in Middle Eastern politics. As night falls over the Red Sea, the summit's banners are folded, the delegates depart, and the microphones fall silent. Yet the echo remains, the idea that, for one brief moment, the world's most divided region stood together against the influence of a single man in Tehran. In that silence lies both the hope and the warning of Sharm El-Sheikh, that global coalitions can rise, but they endure only as long as unity outlasts fear.